Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Monday, May the 16th, 2022. It's my pleasure to introduce our village clerk, Pramod Shah, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker,
Here.
Trustee Robinson,
Here.
Trustee Kuhn,
Here.
Trustee Johnson,
Here.
Trustee Pure-Slovan,
Here.
Trustee Klein,
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Here we have a quorum. The meeting will come to order, and the next item is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Sutker, seconded by Trustee Pure-Slovan. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, I'll call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure-Slovan,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. I would like to read a proclamation congratulating and memorializing Congregation B'nai Shalom Hebrew Association for the Deaf. Whereas the Village of Skokie congratulates and celebrates Congregation B'nai Shalom Hebrew Association of the Deaf, located at 4435 Oakton, Skokie, on its 50th anniversary. It's hard to believe it's been 50 years already. And whereas Congregation B'nai Shalom remains the only full-service synagogue serving the deaf Jewish community in the United States, addressing congregants in English, Hebrew, and sign language, and where all are welcome, deaf and hearing, Jew and non-Jew. And whereas the synagogue was founded by the late Rabbi Douglas Goldhammer of blessed memory, who taught us that the most important thing we can do in this life is be kind, be kind, be kind. And I might add, after this last weekend, we should bear all of that in mind. Whereas Rabbi Goldhammer truly epitomized the words of the great prophet Micah, to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And whereas we honor and recognize the past 50 years of Congregation B'nai Hebrew Association of the Deaf, and the mentoring of Rabbi Douglas Goldhammer, instilled in countless individuals, whether deaf or not, in their spiritual journey. Now therefore I, George Van Dusen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, do hereby proclaim and extend best wishes to Congregation B'nai Shalom Hebrew Association for the deaf on its 50th anniversary. And on a personal note, I would like to just mention that I remember it had to have been maybe 20 years ago, or maybe even longer than that now. Rabbi Goldhammer invited me to attend a service at the synagogue, and what an inspirational time it was. The people there were so welcoming and understanding, whether you were hearing or not hearing, whether you were Jew or non-Jew. He was a wonderful man, and I'm grateful that his vision has been continued. Some of you may remember Mort Paradise. Mort was the first hearing person I met who was a member of B'nai Shalom. And he and I went together to services on a couple of occasions. And ironically, Rabbi Goldhammer died just about a year or so after Mort did. Both great people and tremendous contributors to our community. And I would like to invite Ken Klinkman and David Freerick to join me, and so I can present this, and perhaps you would give us some words. Please, the microphone is all yours.
I don't think there's, I want to say thank you to the village and thank you to the mayor for those kind words. I don't think there's anything that I could possibly say after hearing what the mayor just said about Rabbi Goldhammer and about our temple. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate this so much. Thank you.
I would just like to say one more thing. I see these Skokie finest here tonight. We also want to thank our 10 years of the off-duty coppers, Chicago Police Department, that protect us for the last 10 years. So you guys do it here. They did it for us for 10 years. I think we were a little ahead of the curve in many areas. A lot of people weren't hiring security at that time, but we continue to be protected. So thank you guys also.
Excuse me, Mayor. Can I also say congratulations to Mr. Klinkman on his wife being ordained as rabbi in the next few weeks? Best of luck.
Congratulations. Oh, that's wonderful. Next item on the agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen and village trustees. Good evening, everyone. Item A is regarding the Axon body-worn cameras, squad car camera systems, electronic devices, Interview One systems, and integrated drone platform systems. This is with Axon Enterprise out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and the amount of $400,075. The mayor and village board approved a body-worn camera pilot program with the budget that concluded on April 30th. Since January 2nd, 13 cameras have been deployed as part of the pilot, and it has been a very positive experience. In addition, the Skokie Public Safety Commission conducted a review of Skokie's use of force policies and received numerous comments from citizens and public safety commissioners that expressed their desire for Skokie police to possess body-worn cameras. As part of the pilot program, the police department began researching vendors for body-worn cameras and systems. Police department staff conducted extensive research of 5 major vendors, and it was determined that Axon System produces and maintains the preeminent body-worn cameras platform and the most encompassing single-vendor system for our police department needs. Therefore, staff is recommending the Skokie Police Department enter into a 5-year agreement for 120 Axon AB3 model body-worn cameras with unlimited storage, 40 squad car camera systems, 50 Axon Taser 7s, 9 Axon Interview One systems, and Axon Air integrated drone platform, as well as associated evidence.com platform, technology and software upgrades, and third-party cloud storage. The total annual cost for the equipment and systems is $400,075. The police department has committed to utilizing $230,414 of seized, restricted, and asset forfeiture funds to offset the cost of the Axon integrated systems for the first year. This purchase will fully implement a body-worn camera program. Police Chief Brian Baker and Assistant Finance Director Mike Alexic have led this process. I concur with staff's recommendation and respectfully request mayor and board approval to enter into a 5-year agreement with Axon Enterprise for a total annual cost of $400,075 for Axon integrated systems.
A motion would be in order. Trustee Sutker, seconded by Trustee Robinson, excuse me. Are there any comments or questions? Let me start with this side and we can work our way around. Trustee Robinson?
Yeah. Chief Baker, how are you? I'm good, thank you. Good. First, I just wanted to thank you for your work and leadership with the selection of this particular company and the request for all the cameras and everything that was listed in the agenda. I just wanted you to just give a quick overview for folks who are just tuning in about, you know, what is this body-worn camera and why are we doing it?
Well, the body-worn cameras are going to be worn by every single sworn officer in the department anytime that they are conducting law enforcement-related activities. So think of your normal police officer that's out there working the streets of Skokie. Anytime they interact with a resident or a citizen that has to do with law enforcement activities, whether it's parking enforcement, responding to calls, they have a camera on them that will be recording that interaction. And every officer will have one of those. Like the manager stated in the overview, we think it's a good idea because it documents everything that we do. It helps support our officers. It gives transparency to the citizens. We started this process prior to the Safety Act coming online, requiring it and mandating it. We've always thought it was a good idea, and we will be implementing it more than a year in advance of when we're required to by mandate. And during the pilot program, we've already seen, I can tell you, numerous accounts of where this has been beneficial to us and the public. And we had one just today of a concern a citizen had, and it was very plain to see on the body-worn camera what actually occurred.
Just a follow-up.
Sure.
The integration of the police camera and the taser, can you talk about that piece as well?
So the way the system works, if I could, just to introduce some people I brought here with me in case I need backup. Jeff Matthews is with Axon Enterprises, Deputy Chief Barnes, and Sergeant Gibson. Sergeant Gibson has been our lead on the pilot program. So, and Deputy Chief Barnes was the lead on the contracts and the pricing and all of that. So, so if I get anything wrong, they'll come up here and let me know, because they've been using it day in and day out. But there's different triggers that activate the camera. In normal circumstances, the camera's in a mode where it's ready but not recording, and when the officer is engaged in law enforcement activities, that officer will turn it on. However, if the officer turns on their lights in the car to a certain setting where they're responding in an emergency, the camera will also turn on. If they pull their taser, the camera will turn on. And it will also even turn on and be triggered if there's a triggering event and they're within range of that triggering event. So all the cameras that might be there would turn on, if that makes sense. So that there's redundant systems in place to make sure that we never, hopefully, miss having video and audio of the event, whatever that may be. But there's even a backup system from there that if for some reason it's not captured, it's always recording and buffering, and we can go back and get the video. There's just no audio.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Trustee Sucker.
So can you also speak to how the camera in the car, and the body cameras like work together, or how they help see different views, or how that works?
I can, but I'm confident Jeff can do a better job. So if you don't mind coming up here.
Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. So to that question they're integrated seamlessly. In fact, the body camera acts as the audio for the in-car camera, so there's no range limitation. Like some of the legacy systems, there's usually like a 1,000-foot range on the audio for that. But the department's able to watch those different angles, to your point. Let's say they're doing a DUI stop and somebody runs or something like that. Well, they can watch up to 4 videos automatically synced in the system, evidence.com. So that they can see the holistic approach of what happened in that instance and why an officer maybe made the decision they made in the incident.
And do the cameras in the cars automatically go on just like the body?
Yes, yeah, they all will be activated by those triggers that the chief mentioned, and those triggers are continually reviewed and looked at on feedback from our users nationwide, so that maybe there's another trigger that they want, we work on that and push that out to the users who are already on the system. So, for example, something coming later in the year is like a CAD integration that it would, based on the call type, automatically activate, even if they don't turn the lights on and stuff like that. So those things are continuously improved upon. But the triggers that the PD has available to them today satisfy the vast majority of the time that the cameras are going to be on for the officers. And then the video recall, which the chief mentioned, that satisfies the state mandate of the cameras always being on. But from a privacy standpoint, there's just manual ways to get those off there.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Kuhn?
Yes, can you talk about the storage of the recordings, how it's stored, how long it's stored for, who has access to that?
I'll start, you can take over. So storage is regulated by state law. Every video is stored for a minimum of 90 days. And then if it is not tagged, and there's, in the law, it dictates what circumstances we are required to tag videos. So if it's an arrest, we tag it as an arrest. If it's a use of force, it gets tagged. If it's a complaint from a citizen, it gets tagged, and there's others. If it's not tagged, it's 90 days and it gets deleted. If they're tagged, it's 2 years or at the conclusion of any criminal trial or legal process. And then storage?
Yeah, Chief did a great job answering that. It's they're going to set their retention rates based on state guidelines. And so even if those change in flight, the PD has the ability to change those whenever they need to. And then everything is stored in the Microsoft Azure GovCloud. So from a security standpoint, it's all CJIS compliant, FedRAMP certified, all that kind of stuff.
And then from the village perspective, why would we do cloud storage versus managing it in-house?
Axon does not offer a on-premise storage solution, so it's not an option.
If I may.
Yep.
And just in today's times as well, it's much more cost effective to do it in the cloud versus on-prem. And also from a security standpoint, being in the cloud in four places geographically redundant, so you're less susceptible to a malware attack, somebody clicking on an email, and then all of a sudden your entire system's locked down.
Sorry, just one more follow-up question, if you don't mind. I know we had talked about this during the budget hearing as well. Can you speak about how the equipments are, the lifetime of the equipment and how that would be replaced over time?
Yeah, so with the way that the system that the PD has set up, they're essentially future-proof from both a hardware and a software perspective. So we update the software behind the scenes. So it's not only cloud storage, but it's cloud computing. So their IT or the city IT doesn't have to have hands-on to do those updates. We push those out every 30 days, and that's again based on voice of customer feedback. And then from a hardware standpoint, but batteries in the cell phones in the body cameras are just like cell phones, right? So over time, they don't hold as much of a charge. So we send new equipment at 30-month mark so that they don't have those battery depletion and not cover a full shift. And then the same thing at the 60-month mark, so that, and those new cameras, if we have a newer model out, they get the newer model that comes out. They don't get old equipment that, is based on when they purchase. So future-proof from a hardware and a software perspective. Same thing on the in-car. But that's at 60-month because there's no battery depletion because it's tied to a power source.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan?
Thank you. I'm very much in favor of this, but my question is for the village on the manpower. How does it affect the police department, and how do you handle, like you said, you have to tag, et cetera? Is there someone who's designated for this? Is it creating more work within the village? And do we then have to account for the additional hours of our officers?
Short answer is no. Right now, we've been doing this with 3 people, in essence. When more officers get integrated, so 120 cameras, we're working right now with our CAD system to get it so that way it does 99% of the work for the officers. Now, the officers are going to have some discretion on some calls for service. They may need additional categories, retention periods, that they'll have to put in manually, but we're working on it right now with Jeff, so that way we don't have to do a lot of work at all. And then everything's cloud-based. There's nothing manually to work on at the station.
Chief, do you want to add a little bit about FOIAs and retrieving the
Yeah.
video camera footage?
What we don't know right now is how many FOIA's requests we're going to get in, how many subpoenas we're going to get in for body-worn camera video. All that requires redaction if it is releasable, and the redaction takes time. We just haven't, through the pilot, experienced what the demand is actually going to be. Based on departments that are similar in size to ours, most seem to have 2 staff personnel handling that kind of work for the program. We currently have 2 individuals with half-days that are handling the current workload out of our programs and planning section. So as we go forward, we'll see kind of how we can manage that. I do think we're going to gain efficiencies in that same unit from having the one vendor system, where we currently are spending tons of time doing other processes, trying to locate current in-car video and in answers to subpoenas and FOIAs. That under Axon, the amount of time required to do that will be much less. So what we don't know is the offset, right? And we'll kind of learn that as we go. But I'm hopeful that what we currently have in place, hopefully we'll be able to manage the full department workload.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address this issue? If not, anybody else on the board? Okay.
Chief Baker mentioned that drawing the taser would trigger the camera. Would drawing your sidearm also trigger the camera?
There is,
Yes.
there is equipment that will allow that. However, we felt during our trial, me specifically, having the signal sidearm is what the product is called, wasn't always effective. But however, every call for service we go on is recorded as is. So if it's not already being picked up by our CAD screen, then the video recall will work just the same. So we found that it's cumbersome for officers to have it on them. Seatbelts, we're getting away our cans of our weapons. It's hard to pull our weapons out of our holsters if we needed to, but it had no bearing on the recording of video whatsoever.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Absolutely.
Trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovin,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you.
Item B is regarding the facility management and facility management and programming agreement for the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts with Venue Works, based out of Ames, Iowa. In late fall of 2021, the village received notice that Professional Facilities Management, the North Shore Center for Performing Arts Facility Management and Programming firm, since 1996, was not renewing their agreement after its spring 2022 expiration. As a result, the village issued a request for qualifications, and a committee including village staff and chairman of the Performing Arts Center Board and the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts Foundation determined that Venue Works was the most qualified firm to provide facility management and programming services for the center. Venue Works currently provides facilities management services to nearly 40 venues across the country. Ann Tennis, the Director of Marketing and Communications, is the lead staff person and will introduce the president of Venue Works. I concur with staff's recommendation and respectfully request mayor and board approval of a resolution to enter into an agreement with Venue Works for facility management and programming services for the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts.
Okay, and before you do your introductions, I want to do one. Some of you may not recognize him because he's masked up, sitting in the back, but our former manager, Al Rigoni, as many of you are aware, among his many philanthropic endeavors is he serves as chair of the foundation board for the Performing Arts Center. So, Al, welcome. Good to see you, with or without your mask on. It's always good to see you. Ann?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, John. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's very much my pleasure to bring this agreement in all the 80-page detail to the board for consideration. The culmination of bringing this to you for consideration, as John said, is at the end of a 5-month process. We had a number of stakeholders involved, and I'm very pleased that VenueWorks is our selected vendor, and I'm very excited about the possibilities of what they are going to bring to the North Shore Center with their expertise. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Steve Peters, who is the president of VenueWorks. Steve will introduce his staff, who he brought along, and has a very brief presentation for you. Then after which I'll be glad to answer any questions. Steve?
Thank you. Thanks for having us tonight. I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate your consideration. With me tonight is Tim Sullivan. Tim is our Chief Financial Officer, and Angela Boland. Angela is our Human Resources Vice President. I want to just say who we are, tell you a little bit about what we bring in terms of tools and procedures to North Shore Center for Performing Arts, and what we hope to accomplish. And I promise I'm going to do, I promised Ann, so I'll be in trouble if I'm not done in 8 minutes or less, so. Okay, yeah. We do indeed have, our company's 25 years old. We have 42 venues in 14 states. That includes theaters, arenas, convention centers, outdoor venues. We even service a zoo. Tonight I'm going to talk mostly about the theaters, though, which is the most relevant. Our passion is about events. In our business, nobody comes to an empty building. They come to see the event. And we strive to do and maximize the diversity and the number of events for the impacts that those have on the communities that we serve. The impact is recreational, it's educational, it's economic, and it's cultural. And those are great things to bring to a community. It's a lot of fun. And by maximizing the programming at the venues that we work with, we feel like we're helping to maximize all those good impacts for the communities that we serve. Here's a short list of 9 venues that we, theaters that we do manage. The top middle one, Burnsville, the Ames Center in Burnsville, Minnesota. Burnsville being a suburb of Minneapolis, St. Paul, is very similar to North Shore in that it has a 1,000-seat theater plus a 150-seat black box theater. It's got some rehearsal space, shop space. In terms of the type of physical facility it is, it'd be very similar to North Shore Center for the Performing Arts. Closer to where we are tonight, for the last 5 years, we've been running the Rialto Square Theater in Joliet. In fact, just last week, that board there approved a 5-year renewal of our contract. So we know the Chicago market. Our transition will start with enrolling the staff that work now at the center. We've had great conversations with Michael Pauken, and believe that we're going to have great fun working with the folks that are there. That's a real benefit to us to be able to take on their knowledge. It's our company culture that we kind of support those people in every area of operation. I'm going to click those off in just a minute. But they stand higher and reach higher because of the support that we're able to bring them. We have a national employee pool that allows us, we're part of a pool that allows us to secure benefits, rights, and 401k participation and provide the kind of benefits that we want to for our employees. And through all this, in this transition, we're going to be focused on meeting the village's expectations. So in operations, a few words you're going to see come up a lot tonight into this, just these few slides, but training, communications, we have standardized procedures. We've got an electronic library with security passwords that is available with all kinds of how-to forms. It's for everything from how to put together a sponsorship agreement for sponsoring an event to how to put together the event contract itself, to how to put together a training program for severe weather awareness and security. We're very much on top of OSHA compliance and any other kind of compliance that goes forward. Security and preventive maintenance. I'm going to talk more about maintenance in a second. Capital improvement planning, here it is with maintenance, but those three blue elements in the middle sort of guide how we work with our clients and our cities toward capital improvement planning. First and highest priority is always public safety. If you've got something that constitutes an unsafe situation, that's the first to be addressed. Maintaining the facilities as they are, obviously just like your own homes. If you've got a leaky roof, everything below it is in jeopardy, so we want to maintain the existing facilities. And finally, the enhancement of facilities that can provide a greater return on investment and allow you to do more kinds of programming or more kinds of events or improve the patron experience in the facility. Marketing, we're very strenuous in our marketing. That today starts with a robust, interactive social media and digital presence. We will provide an annual marketing plan as part of the budget process, event promotional plans for each event that happens, post-event valuations, and we're always believing and we're promoting the venues that we service, that we're promoting them back to the community that they're in, so that the community can appreciate what's going on. So event programming, this is why you hire us, is to bring those events. We'll start by working very closely with the resident performing arts organizations that are working day in and day out at the theaters. We'll work with the Performing Arts Center Board to assemble a featured event series of 20 or more performances. Nationally, we're booking several hundred concerts, shows, attractions, family shows each year, so we're in that market constantly. There'll be national touring artists and attractions. VenueWorks is also a theater producer. We produce some national tours, we produce some new work. We'll have an announcement coming out in later this week, I hope, about a production that we bought the rights for during the pandemic that we're very optimistic to actually take to Broadway. So we know about what it takes to produce for the theater. And the whole idea is to bring more and more audiences to Skokie and to serve the population of Skokie. The only way to do that is to build community partnerships. That'll start with those resident performing arts organizations, educational institutions, the business community, local media, service organizations. I mean, everybody that has an event is a potential client or to be a tie-in to the events that we're already doing. Local sponsors that we'll work to try to secure. So, and it's kind of fun, we'll come in with some new eyes. So while we're very confident of the expertise that Michael and his staff have at the center now, when you come in with some new eyes, sometimes you find some new opportunities, and I think we'll, together with them, we'll discover some of those. Food and beverage, part of our proposal, part of our contract is we're committing to a sizable investment to try to enhance food and beverage and the patron experience at the center. You know, if you've ever been to an event like that, the intermissions are only so long and those lines get long. And so if we can serve more people faster, if we can broaden our menu offerings, Village Attorney Lord and I were talking before the show. He was talking about being at his grandchildren's dance competition in Atlanta all day long on Saturday. Those people get hungry, and they're an important element of the revenue that comes to our theaters. In fact, it's big business, these dance competitions. There's a company called Masquerade Dance, which uses our facility in Burnsville so often that they actually bought the naming rights to the auditorium inside the Ames Center. So inside the Ames Center, it's the Masquerade Dance Auditorium. So in order to be able to attract those folks, in order to keep them happy, in order to keep all those parents and grandparents going for the whole day, an exhaustive menu can be a great attraction to finding more events like that to come to your theater. That also brings a lot of money from outside the community for people who stay and visit. And that's increased profitability that falls to the bottom line. We bring a culture of service, that, some of that planning and training you see in there, again, leadership. We empower our employees. Most of our employees will be part-time. They're there just for the event and then they go home. Early on in my career, somebody that we were training for a part-time job, probably an usher job, you know what? They said, just train me, then trust me. And I've never forgotten that. You need to train people, you need to give them the empowerment to be able to do the job. And we feel real confident about that. And we appreciate them for the job that they do. And finally, well, all of this we do within a budget, and we do it with transparency and accountability. We will prepare an annual budget that we'll bring before this board each year for ratification and approval or changes as needs be. We will report on events, event by event, with P&L reports. We have monthly reports in which we'll compare where we are to date with where the budget thought we would be, and we'll prepare new year-end projections if need be, so that we're always trying to live within the budget. We can performance benchmark this facility with our other facilities to see how it's doing on such things as per cap. If you got a comic here and you have that same comic in Joliet, what were the per capita food and beverage numbers in Joliet versus here, or in Ames, at the Ames Center in Burnsville versus here, so that we're always doing that comparison to try to know where we could do better. And then you'll get an annual report from us that puts all this together at the end of the year. Our contract supports this kind of growth and these kinds of accomplishments with a 5-year term, the retention of incumbent staff. It's a base management fee. We're making an investment in food and beverage and taking a commission for that. We get a subsidy for reducing, we get an incentive, I'm sorry, for reducing the subsidy, which Nick has emphasized to me is a very important part of what we need to do. And we will reduce the subsidy while we maintain the program that you want to have. And all these commissions and incentive fees are at risk. They don't just come automatically. We have to earn them. And that's it. We've been, like I said, doing this for 25 years. I'm really honored that you're considering us to manage the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts. It's a beautiful facility with a beautiful heritage, and it would be our great honor to be able to continue that legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. First, let me get a motion, and then we'll do Q&A. Motion, Pure Slovan, seconded by Trustee Klein. Comments or questions? I'll go this side first. Any comments or questions? No comments or questions? Anybody? You must be an expert salesman. Great job. Thank you, Mr.
I was hoping to
Peters.
give them something to do. Chief set the example. Give the hard questions to somebody.
There you go. Welcome. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Cohen,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pure Slovan,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you very much. I'm
Welcome
honored to
aboard.
work with you.
It's great having you.
Item C was approved as part of tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report this evening.
Thank you. Next item is report of our Corporation Counsel, Michael Lorge.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, trustees and everyone. I have no report this evening. Therefore, that would conclude my report for this evening.
I think this is unique. A lawyer who doesn't have a report.
I could think of some things to raise for discussion, but
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is report of our Plan Commission. Chairman Paul Luke with Matt Brandmeier. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I have one case tonight. It is case 2021-31P, a chapter amendment, general zoning ordinance updates. At the meeting of the Plan Commission on April 7th, we reviewed updates to the zoning ordinance that was presented by staff, which includes the following items. Item number 1, no longer required formal public hearings for subdivision plots and parking determinations. These items will be presented as regular business on Plan Commission agendas. Item number 2, add the OR district in the site plan section. Even though the site plan review is required in the OR district, it is not currently listed in the site plan section. Number 3, prohibit window trim lighting that is not an architectural feature of the building. Does not include seasonal lights. Number 4, add a section for solar energy systems which explicitly allows rooftop mounted and yard installed solar panels. Item number 5, add the option for mixed use developments in the B4 district. The change will be incorporated in design elements required in other mixed use districts. Change the name from B4 to RX and add cannabis dispensary as a permitted use in the district. Number 6, allow parking to be shared between commercial and residential uses within mixed-use developments. And number 7, change the buffer requirements for cannabis dispensaries if located within 750 feet of the Skokie Police Headquarters. The Plan Commission unanimously approved the proposed chapter amendments on the condition that staff works on language that will maintain a minimum level of commercial within the B4 district. Please also note that the staff continues to improve the amendment language after the Plan Commission's recommendation, but no substantive changes will be made. Under interested parties, legal notice was properly advertised as prescribed by the zoning chapter. For the solar panel section, staff worked with SolSmart. And for the B4 changes, staff worked with the affected property owners, including representatives of Westfield Old Orchard Mall, Village Crossing, and the owners of the property at Tui and Linder. Plan Commission recommends by a vote of 5 ayes, no nays, 4 members absent, that Chapter 118 zoning of the Skokie Village Code be amended.
A motion to accept the zoning chapter amendment, case 2021-31P, be recognized. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Johnson. Are there any comments or questions? Trustee Klein.
Good evening. I have a few concerns. The first one is under number 1. You say you want no public hearings for parking determinations in all instances?
Yes.
Okay, and why is the planning taking this as a recommendation body, and why don't we just do parking determinations with the zoning board, which is a board of final determination? And they have just as much experience with it.
Presently, parking determinations, the Plan Commission is the final determining body, not the zoning board.
As a recommendation body?
No,
As a-
we would be the final determinator.
Okay, I apologize then. Okay, then my last one is number 6. You want to use the same, using commercial and residential spaces in the same count? I mean, if you have a development.
Yeah.
And you're telling any retail, you're gonna count their spaces towards the residential parking?
Go ahead.
So if it's a mixed-use building.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Which we have in CX district, TX, NX, and potentially RX, they could share, the commercial part could share up to 20% of their spaces with the residential. And the idea is that the parking demand for residential versus commercial are different, where a lot of people that are renting apartments are not there during the day, which is when most of the commercial is more active. So, and then there's of course the concept that a lot of commercial spaces are just overparked, period. And there's a lot of surplus in parking that could be used by residences.
Well, my concern is just visiting some of the newer developments that have mixed use, of course, we're talking. And in these developments, the residential parking one per unit.
Right.
These units usually, more than once, have, more than not, have 2 cars per unit. So which means that it's taking up the commercial. And when commercial is not even occupied yet, we are turning away potential stores because they view, as I view, just by going and looking, that there is not ample parking. So that's why I have a problem with this one, because I don't want to cut short any parking requirements.
So the residential parking is at a bare minimum 1.25. So there's the 0.25 is the increment for guest parking. Overall, yeah, I think it's, you know, up to the owners to manage these buildings and manage how they're leasing their parking up. And if, I know of one instance where, and I think this is what happened, where the building owner, as he leased spaces, or at least, you know, the apartments, leased too many parking spaces, or gave too many parking spaces to the tenants. And so that had to be resolved, but overall, if it's a mixed-use building, I think it's up to the owner to make accommodations for him. And I think that's something that we need to speak more clearly about to these developers.
Yeah, to make sure that their potential retail tenants
Right.
do have an opportunity to succeed.
Well, particularly in the downtown where, you know, where you can walk, you know, you have access to mass transit, you can bike, there's other opportunities to, rather than using a parking space. That's really the whole precept that relying on as far as fewer parking spaces in these buildings. And mixed use is essentially taking advantage of density and compactness in order to allow for that. So I wouldn't do this in you know, just commercial districts, but proposing to do this in mixed-use districts that, you know, have other considerations for arriving to these destinations.
Oh, I understand your point. I hope you understand mine.
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Other comments or questions? If not,
One other thing, though. Before we take a vote on this, I would like to bifurcate and have 6 voted on by itself.
Would it be possible for the residents of the buildings that we're talking about to be given a tag or something that they get 1 car per unit, and then they can hang that in the, like, off of the mirror when they go to park in that lot, so that if the businesses find there are too many cars that they can't account for, and those cars don't have the permit tag, then, you know, by all means, ticket and tow, but at least that seems like it would allay your concern that, you know, if some people have 2 cars per unit, well, they just wouldn't be allowed to park 2 cars in that lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
yeah.
I just don't want it to get to that point where, you know, if a building is not full and they freely give out spaces, and that's part of their sales pitch, we have free parking. And like I said, most units have 2 cars. It's just the way of the world right now. And if there's a vacant store, let's say in the bottom, you want a tenant to go in there to generate revenue. The tenant's gonna be apprehensive if he sees, and if he does just like I do a drive-by at different times and see that the retail spaces that have been allocated to the retail are full and there's no retail in there. I just don't want it to get to that point. I am for stricter, you know, parking to
Well,
the
I
ordinance.
think the tag idea works, except that it would be up to the building owner to initiate that kind of regulation. But I don't think we can do it.
Well, I'd just like to stay within the right parameters. In other words, if it's 1.25 per unit, and then whatever the retail is, depending on what goes in there, Like what? What's a dental office? Like 1 to 100, 1 to 200?
Well, it depends
So-
on what type of,
Yeah,
you know.
that's what I'm saying, but I just don't, I want to be able to have, I want to be able to welcome a retailer in. Because parking is at a premium in all the things that Matt mentioned.
I think we, you know, we can go back to the premise of, do it as a case-by-case basis, that's all we can do.
All right, or if you say that we have, that we will take a look or make contingency or stipulations when we do permits that, or when we recommend development, that they must have more, ample parking.
If I could, you
Please.
might change this language to require a parking determination, and then it would be looked at on a case-by-case basis rather than just allowing them to have that by right.
With that
Or-
verbiage, I can live with. I
Yeah.
can live with that.
Yeah.
I rescind my request for to bifurcate it, Your Honor.
Okay, how do we, Matt, are you suggesting we rephrase number 6?
Well, it states in the report here that the staff will be changing the language as we go, so I don't think you need to do that.
Okay,
Well, we would present the ordinance at, in a month from now, and I think there would be an addition to section 211 that says that essentially a parking determination is required.
okay, does that,
I find that
okay, so
ample.
in a month, it'll be back before us in ordinance form?
Yeah.
As a code,
that's fine.
Okay.
code text change.
Okay.
Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutzker,
Aye.
trustee Robinson,
Aye.
trustee Kuhn,
Aye.
trustee Johnson,
Aye.
trustee Pure Slovin,
Aye.
trustee Klein,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
That concludes our report.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board? Yes?
First, I'd like to try to adjust the focus on here, because from back there, the planning commission's, that, was blurry. Yeah, see how it's not sharp? Okay. My name is Lauren Gradnicki. I live on Colmar. And I'm here to continue the series that I mentioned last time. Have you ever noticed how much cooler Evanston is than Skokie in the summer? Temperature-wise. Just crossing the channel by foot or by bike, there's a noticeable drop in temperature. Your distance to the lake hasn't changed enough for the lake to account for the sudden drop. And I'll come back to that. Last week I told you everything you need to know about waves, that the speed of a wave equals the wavelength times the frequency, that waves have crests and troughs, that the longer the wavelength, the lower the frequency, and vice versa. And then here, if speed is c, wavelength is lambda, and frequency is f, we have c equals lambda f. We can also solve that for f, just doing a little bit of algebra. This week I'm going to talk about light. Light travels as an electromagnetic wave. The part of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can see is called visible light. Of the wavelengths to which our eyes are sensitive, red light has the longest wavelength, and violet or purple light has the shortest wavelength. There are plenty of wavelengths that we can't see on either side, but they're still light. Ultraviolet light has shorter wavelengths than we can see, and infrared light has longer wavelengths than we can see. Light is also a form of energy. In fact, it's emitted and absorbed as if it's little particles of energy. We call those particles photons. Max Planck discovered that the energy of a photon is equal to this constant times the frequency. Don't worry about the constant. And this is called Planck's law. And he wrote it in this form, but we're going to be interested in it in this form, where basically we took this and we substituted in for F. So now we've got two constants on the top and the wavelength on the bottom. Now as the wavelength goes up, the energy goes down. And as the wavelength goes down, the energy goes up. Shifting gears, let's talk about black body radiation. Don't worry about what the units of this are, but a perfect black body is a theoretical object that absorbs all wavelengths of light that hit it. This light imparts energy to the black body and increases its temperature. The black body emits light according to its temperature. The amount of light emitted per area, per wavelength, per time looks like this, where at long wavelengths it's low. There's a point where there's just no light, and then it kind of peaks here. The location of this peak depends on the temperature. If, as you're heating up the same object, at temperature 1, which is the lowest and coolest and reddest, the curve might look like this. At a higher temperature, it will look like this. And if you'll notice, not only is the entire curve shifting toward higher and higher energy per area radiated, but the peak is actually shifting also to shorter and shorter wavelengths. Wien's law lets you find or relates the wavelength of this maximum to the temperature of the object. And again, this is a law. It's one of those things where they just sat around measuring a whole bunch of stuff and drew a line. Just for some comparison, humans have a temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 310 degrees Kelvin. And this is in Kelvin scale. A Kelvin degree is the same size as a Celsius degree. So the maximum wavelength for a human is about 0.935 millimeters. I was going to stop there, but then this past week I started thinking about the urban heat island effect, which brings me back to that observation I made where crossing the channel is instantly cooler. I mean, it's got to be 5 to 10 degrees cooler. But so I want to apply this concept of black body radiation to the urban heat island effect. Pavement and rooftops absorb a lot of energy in form of sunlight. They re-radiate this energy primarily at infrared wavelengths, and these wavelengths are registered by us as heat. Skokie has a lot more exposed pavement and pavement in general per capita than Evanston does. When I say exposed pavement, I mean pavement that is not in this shade. The parking lots and single-story commercial building roofs absorb sunlight and radiate that energy back into the air as heat. So it increases the air temperature, it increases the cooling costs, but we can fix that. We can start an aggressive tree planting campaign. Anyone who has walked more than a block in the summer knows how much cooler it is under the trees. We can change the rules for how parking lots are built so they are required to include shade. This would benefit the people who parked there because then they don't have to get into a car that's well over 100 degrees. It would benefit everyone who runs an air conditioner in the vicinity because if the air is cooler, your air conditioner doesn't have to work as hard and everybody saves money who's running their air conditioner. Skokie will generally be a more comfortable place to be and it will improve quality of life. Not to mention that shady edge of forest environments are something that people across all cultures and environments find soothing. A study was done asking people to describe what they think of as an idyllic picture, and most of the people described, like, you've got trees over here and kind of a meadow over there. So you've got forests with open spaces next to them. And we can address the urban heat island effect. So I encourage you to do so in future decisions involving sustainability plans. Thank you.
Thank you. I would note that we do have a program whereby the village provides free parkway trees.
Oh, I'm aware of that program, Mayor, but I'm talking more about parking lots.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Okay,
It's not the same thing.
okay. I do want to make a concluding comment before we leave. I beg your pardon? Of course. Well, come on up. I'll wait until everybody is done.
My name is Amet Markisic. I live in Highland Park, but my family and I have owned and leased investment property here in Skokie for probably over 20 years. Not sure this is really the right audience, but I kind of want to talk about what happened over the weekend with the murder of that young child on Main and Skokie Boulevard. There's some other residents from the area here. We have a property that backs up into that corner, and I just, and we've had it for several years, and I want to talk about, you know, we as landlords have a responsibility to put in good tenants in these buildings and do right by our tenants. And the police are probably aware of the building that this happened at. They're very familiar with them. I think they're, from my understanding is the folks that I've spoken to at the police force, they're there on a regular basis. I think that the landlord in this case is being very irresponsible, bringing in people that, you know, don't meet criteria for either background checks or things of that nature. I know that we all go through a program where we agreed that we would maintain a crime-free kind of apartment buildings. And I mean, I assure you that, you know, I've not walked this building, but if this is the kind of quality of people that he's putting in this building, I assure you that if you walk that building, there's probably dozens and dozens of violations for code purposes. And just, I don't think that you can probably do anything. And again, it's not a, you may not be a body that could really address this. But I can tell you, talking to tenants that I've talked to, and there's 10 units there, and they're afraid, right? So you know what's going to happen over time. Good tenants will leave. You will get a lower quality tenant that will come in, and it may take 10, 15, 20 years. You know, we recently, I made a decision back out of a different property here just because I have a concern of what's going on. And I think you want good family-owned businesses that, you know, the big buildings in downtown Skokie are great, but you know, 90% of your properties are owned by, you know, mom and pop type people like me. So, it's horrible. It's sad. And the fact that this is the second time this has happened in the same building in less than 3 years is really, really sad.
Yeah, Trustee Robinson.
I just wanted to understand, Mr. Sir. Come on back up. I just wanted to understand quality of people. If you can talk about that a little more.
So, I mean, when I lease, I run a credit check. You have certain credit. I mean, we're all free to do whatever we want to do. You run a background check. You know, if somebody's got a criminal background, I'm not inclined to rent to them. It has nothing to do with color. You know, if somebody's been arrested, I don't want them in my building. And if I've had trouble, I've had issues with tenants where, you know, they pick a fight, all of a sudden there's police at the building, and I don't want that to happen. You can react one of two ways, right? You can just look the other way, or you can address it. And if, you know, if the option is to evict, or if the option is to have a conversation, you know, that's what you need to do. And, you know, I've had a lady that's lived there for 20 years that, you know, she's done. And, you know, she's a black lady, and I feel for her, and I don't know what to tell her. I wouldn't want that to happen next door to me. But, you know, when you have these buildings, and again, if it's a bigger place, you know, that there's probably less care. I always look at, you know, when I put one person in this unit, already going to get along with the person in the next unit. You know, if there's two people above, you know, do you put, you know, a family of four in that unit above? So you've got to kind of mix and match. I get it. It's not always, and not everybody works out. But to have two murders happen in the same building in 3 years there's something wrong there. And I mean, you can talk to the police because we have cameras by our building, and they've talked to me about this, and you know, they're very familiar with this building. They're not familiar with my building. And, you know, I've got a mixture of everybody, and everybody gets along, and I mean, and I've had problems, and you know what, I've cut leases within, you know, at the end of 12 months, I've cut a lease less than 12 months. If you are not respectful to your neighbors, you're not respectful to your own family, and listen, we all like to make money, but it shouldn't be just about that. I wouldn't have, because that shot could have gone right through the alley into somebody in our property.
And, I mean, there's an innocent kid that died. Keep on forgetting that. Or we may not be addressing it as much. And again, I don't know if there's anything that really can be done, but just the fact this has happened twice in 3 years in the same property leads me to believe that it's being managed inappropriately or not correctly. That's what I mean by quality of a tenant. I mean, when I rent to somebody, I ask for 2 or 3 personal references. You know, how are they? You know, what kind of a person is it? You can spend time and money, and you may release it for less, but I'd rather get a good quality tenant than a not good quality tenant. That's what I mean by quality. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
You know,
And, you know, just for words to, you know, words matter. And the quality of tenant, to me, is probably more savory than an unsavory quality of people. To humanize the people who live there, especially the one who had a loss.
yeah, I mean, my heart, I got a little kid, my heart broke. I mean, but at some point, some blame's gotta be put on, I mean, for this to happen twice in 3 years in the same building, I mean, I don't know how many murders Skoki's got in a year. I bet you it's not more than 5. I don't know, I'm just.
No, it's not, yeah.
I
It's
mean,
not
for it to
even-
happen twice,
yeah.
and I don't know the square footage, how many units are, and how many buildings are in this town, for it to happen twice in one building. You know, we've had, you know, multiple properties here, and I don't think I've had the police called, you know, once or twice. You know, and you mix all people, and that's what being a landlord is, right? If I've got you know, somebody working a night shift, and I put you know, a bunch of people above him, well, they're not gonna be happy, I get it, they're gonna fight and argue. But you've gotta be conscious of that. Now, I don't know the circumstances of the specific case, but I just know when I'm speaking to my tenants, how unhappy, or how scared they are. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And, you know, if it happened in my building, I mean, I'd be losing sleep over it, and I'm sure the person doesn't feel the same, but, you know, everybody kinda gets a pass once, right? And having it happen multiple times, it's.
There were some unique circumstances. The 2 cases are not related, and
And I'm not asking for, I get it, it's under.
well, I
yeah.
couldn't give you
Yeah, I'm
the
not-
circumstances even if I wanted to. We're restricted in what
Yeah.
it would be appropriate to say. But let me just say that it is accidental, if you will. I don't know, that's a very good choice of words, that it happened regrettably at that same building, but the circumstances are not related, and each one was, in fact, rather unique. That's all I can say, and I just hope people will be understanding. I think we all can understand. We all get very anxious whenever we hear anywhere in the area, not just Skokie, but anywhere, that somebody has had the use of force. I was going to mention what happened over the weekend in Milwaukee and Orange County, Buffalo, and then another one.
None of this makes it
I just
okay.
learned about. No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. It's just, it's heartrending when you think about the proliferation of guns in this country. I'm sorry. We now have 1 gun in circulation for every person that lives in the United States. I mean, that's just an astronomical thing. And the problem that Mayor Lightfoot is confronted with what happened in Millennium Park over the weekend. I don't know what the solution is to these problems, but we have all got to try and concentrate and figure out what is it we all can do individually as part of our greater community. I don't know anywhere I go. This last weekend, on Saturday, I had 4 events to attend. Everybody was nervous. I don't know, at one event in particular, people were asking, what happened in Milwaukee? What happened in Orange County? And then the tragedy, unspeakable tragedy in Buffalo. We talk a lot about it, and it's just time that we do something about it. I'm proud of the board here. We have taken action. That doesn't mean that we don't have more action that we should be thinking about and perhaps taking. These are very challenging times we live in, and dangerous times. And what happens elsewhere, whether it's Wisconsin, California, New York, Chicago, Skokie, Evanston, anywhere, I think it's something that we all have to think about, because all of these affect families. And people this evening are grieving. Before coming over this evening, I was watching the news, and there was a woman, Buffalo, New York, who, in the midst of a press conference, practically collapsed in tears over the loss, I believe it was of it was either her brother or her son. And we need national leadership. These guns travel across state boundaries, and it's not just that. We also need to adjust the way we think. So anyway,
My thought.
I didn't articulate
Yeah.
it very well.
My thought is that, some responsibility should be borne by the landlords, by the owners. And I don't, again, you have different sized buildings. If you have a 10-unit building and the police are there more than 3 times a year, well, then that landlord ought to have the conversation, ought to need to talk to somebody. Explain why the cops have been there 3 or 4 times a year, what he's doing to fix it or she's doing to fix it. And obviously, if you've got a 60-unit building, you've got to adjust for volume and odds. But I mean, just somebody should be, you should, and I ought to have to. If police are over on our property, I should have to come and answer somebody. Well, what am I doing wrong? And I get it. If it's a domestic issue, you may not have control, but you have some control. I mean, we as landlords do have a lot of control over the buildings. You hate to say it, but you do. So, and you know what? We're probably the closest thing to some kind of law in a building, and you can have a conversation with your tenant and, what's okay, what's not okay. But, if the police are at your building on a regular basis and there's no responsibility on you, and I know I've used my 3 minutes, so I'll let go, but that's all I'm just trying to suggest.
I understand.
Whether that be me or somebody else, there should be some kind of responsibility that's pushed onto the landlords.
Yes, and we do talk to the landlords. There's a point where if there are, I forget, is it three police calls?
Right,
we call in the landlord and talk to them. But point taken. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind giving Sylvia Luke your name and phone number. Thank you. Oh.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just lived in Skokie since 6 years old.
The microphone.
All right, my name's Siad Odzik. I moved to Skokie when I was 6. I lived down the street on Main and Kilbourne, and I just want to second what he had to say. I took my bike Sunday morning after hearing what happened right down the street, and I'm sure you guys know details more than I do, but the neighboring building had people out, and we were just talking, and the word from what I've gotten is he's just a slumlord. I'm sure you guys know that, so let's not like mince words here. The owner's no good. The neighbors all know it. This, from what I've heard, now you guys can confirm, but it's not even the same building, it's the same unit. So it's a different, like you said, different case, but it's the same even apartment, which is, it's sad. And so, trying to think what, I mean, and again, you guys know better, but the person, the people that were there said 31 shots fired into the building from the outside. I don't know if that's true or not, but there were casings on the outside. I'm sure people didn't. I mean, that's just, I get what's going on throughout the country, but, you know, this is down the block from me, I'm sure from you guys as well. I don't know what there is that we can do. Any kind of pressure we can possibly put on this owner to get his act together. My family owns property in Rogers Park. I've been managing that property for 10 years, so I have an idea of what the prior gentleman was talking about screening your tenants, making sure, you know, just doing the basic checks. And it sounds like, just from hearsay from that morning, talking to the neighbors there, that this guy's, you know, he's not doing any checks for anybody moving into his building. And so, yeah, I mean, I've got 3 children as well. I've got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And so to hear that the 9-year-old passed and the 6-year-old, I mean, it's just, you know, shouldn't be happening. We understand that it is, but it would be nice, you know, this, I speak from experience. I haven't come to many of these. It's probably my fault that it takes something like this to show up. I'm kind of disappointed. Not many people are here as well. So, you know, I kind of point the blame on myself as well. What else can I do? So if we can kind of communicate, and you can kind of communicate to the neighbors, and I mean, I don't know if there's some kind of plan or something that we can do as like and even that pocket, you know, there's pockets of Skokie, so let's be real, there's pockets of Skokie that are rougher than other pockets, and I feel like if we can kind of, the people that live in those pockets, if we can kind of come together and maybe, I don't know, do something, program or something, I have no idea, I mean, but it would be nice, and considering especially, you know, 2-3 years ago, it was the same, you know, like we said, same thing happened, or similar thing happened, and, you know, once in a while, you can kind of chalk it up to, you know, it's gonna happen, but, you know, when it kind of happens in this kind of way, in the same spot, I hope something can be done, so, that's it.
Thank you. Would you give your name as well? Thank you. Trustee Zucker.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. We are adjourned.